So today I'm going to give you guys 3 components that you need in order to build a successful training program for distance running. So let's get into it. How's it going, runners? My name is Justin Thompson. I'm your average running PT, and I help the average runner achieve their own personal elite status. If that's something you guys are into, then go ahead and hit that subscribe button and click the bell so you know when the next video comes out. So let's jump right into this. I'm going to give you guys 3 components of a successful training program for distance running athletes. Okay, so let's jump into number 1. Number 1 is you have to have specificity in your training program. So what do I mean when I talk about specificity? Well, when I talk about specificity, we're talking about, does your training actually match the event that you're trying to train for? Alright, so does the energy systems that are required, does the strength that is required, does the activity that you are doing translate into the activity that you need to do on race day or performance day? So when we talk about running, oftentimes we're going to be talking about things like energy systems, and there are 3 different basic energy systems, one of which gets burned out in the first 10 seconds of energy, of exercise. And then another one gets burned out in the first 2 minutes or so. Beyond that 2 to 3 minutes, now you're basically getting into what is really the meat of the distance running energy and that you are getting your energy from. So distance running is primarily aerobic, which means we are trying to use fat for fuel. We are trying to use energy in the presence of oxygen. We're not trying to burn energy that is not using oxygen. That is anaerobic or glycolytic type of energy systems. We are using aerobic in the presence of oxygen. And I've seen the stat before that basically if you run a 5K that you are using about 84% aerobic energy as opposed to the other, 16% of anaerobic energy. And I haven't been able to track down the actual study that found those numbers, but I did track down a study that showed what happens in kind of middle distance kind of running. And it's easy to translate from there kind of what happens in the longer distance stuff. So the study that I'm looking at is from Paul Gaston from 2001, and this shows that within the first 4 minutes, you're basically using 79% aerobic energy system, okay? And the other 21% is coming from the anaerobic systems. Now, if that's happening in the first 4 minutes of maximal exercise, then what happens in a 5K that lasts, if you're elite, somewhere less than 15 minutes, or if you're kind of somewhere in the middle, less than 20 minutes like myself, or if you're a total beginner and you're not as quick with those 5Ks, then 25, 30 minutes even. How much more is that percentage of being aerobic as opposed to anaerobic? So it's easy to say that, it probably is somewhere around 84% that you are using aerobic energy systems during a 5K. And then if you kind of extrapolate that out even further, and I've seen the stat on these as well, that a marathon race is anywhere between 97 and 99% aerobic. So, it goes to show that whenever we talk about specificity of training, is your training specific to the event that you're going to be running in? How much more do we need to be focusing on aerobic energy systems in our training than the anaerobic stuff? So less of the speed work and more of the slower, easier running that trains that aerobic system. This is why I've been working on MAF training, a MAF method running, for the greater part of the last year. And MAF method is only one method of using this heart rate based training to kind of keep yourself in a certain aerobic zone. but it's really worked for me, and that's why I've talked really ad nauseum about it over the last year or so on this channel. So really important to make sure that your training program is specific to the actual event that you are training for. The second component that you have to have in your training program if you want to have success is that you have to be consistent. And this may be self-explanatory, but let me give you a little bit of a visual representation as to why this is so important to stay consistent with your training. Okay, so I've used this particular graph before when talking about recovery, but I'm going to use it in a little bit of a different way now. So what I want to show you guys is what happens when you actually do a training session. So if you're just kind of doing nothing, then you have a training session. What you're going to do is you're going to create a breakdown in your body that will then require a recovery period that happens over time. Now, what happens though is if you provided a strong enough stimulus to break things down to the point where our body's going to create what's called supercompensation. And whenever we do supercompensation, it's going to come back stronger than its original baseline. So it might be a little bit higher now than what it was after you had that, or before you had that training session. All right. Now, what happens though is if there is too much distance between each training session, now what's going to happen is this is going to not just level off, but it's going to come back down. So if you allow too much time, you're going to return back to the same level that you were at, or even worse. Okay, so what happens is we have to be consistent with our training so that when we hit this level, then we're going to give it another stimulus, another workout, right? So then you're going to go down, and it's going to build back up even stronger. And that's going to create this consistency and this continual supercompensation in our system so that we are continuing to improve over time. Hey, if you guys are liking this video, go ahead and hit that little thumbs up button down below. I really appreciate it if you guys do that, but only do it if you actually like the content, because I don't want you guys lying to me. I really want to know whether this is helpful to you or not. So go ahead and head on down there, hit that like button if you're enjoying the content in this video. And so the third thing that you have to have in a successful training program is progression. And so I'm going to take you back to the whiteboard again so I can show you exactly what I'm talking about in terms of progression of a training program. So here's what I'm talking about when we're talking about progression of a training program. So if we go back to consistency, and you're continually building your consistency and building with super compensation, what's going to end up happening is you're going to change a training parameter, and you're going to have a quick increase in your abilities, but then it's going to level off unless you add a new progression. Okay, if you add some sort of new progression, then you might get another bump in your performance. But then again, if you stay at the same level in terms of your training and your capacity, or what kind of effort you're putting in, then you're going to end up leveling off, and you'll need to progress it in some other way again. Now, there's a bunch of different ways that you can progress your training. You can progress with duration. You can progress with intensity, and you can progress with frequency. Okay, so duration, now we're looking at things like volume. So you're increasing the amount of time that you are actually doing the activity. Intensity, now you're increasing, say, your pace. Okay, you're increasing your pace. And then frequency, now you're going from running 3 times a week to now going to 4 times or 5 times a week. Okay, so these are the different ways that you can progress, and whenever you start to kind of level off and plateau, then you need to add one of these three things. Maybe you're adding a little bit more volume, maybe you're adding a little bit more intensity, or maybe you're adding in another day of training. But whatever you do, your training program has to include some sort of progression over time so that you are continually having these increases in improvement and not just plateauing in your training program. So that's it. 3 components of a successful training plan for distance running. Now let me know if there's any components that you guys would put in there that I might have left out today, but I'm not saying that this list is completely exhaustive. What I would love to hear from you guys in the comments below though is if there's something specific that you guys want in this list that you guys kind of adhere to in your training programs that I didn't talk about today. I want you guys to let me know those things down in the comments below. Now head on out there, seek your elite. God bless, and I'll see you next time.